Dear student, welcome to our biology class, and in today's class we are going to learn about growth and development. So I request you to put all distractions aside, get your pen and get your book. Make sure you sit in a quiet place, and if you have headsets, put on your headsets and let's get into class. Now let's not waste time. What is growth? We are going to begin by defining exactly what growth is. Now, for you to understand growth, there are some words that you should always understand them. So, my clear definition of growth is that it is defined as irreversible permanent increase in size and dry weight. Now, I want you to understand these key terms: irreversible or permanent. So, it means it does not come back. When you are growing, you keep growing. You will not become younger, or there is a certain factor that will come and make you younger. It's not going to happen. So, what we mean by growth, it is the irreversible or permanent increase in the size and the dry weight of an organism. Now, dry weight meaning, I like talking about a balloon. When you put a balloon, for example, when you say increase in size, when you put a balloon and starts increasing in size, that is not growth. It is can because it is not permanent and it has increased in size, but we can reverse it back. That is when I'm defining the definition of growth. I like giving you a picture of a balloon. So that is not growth because it is irreversible. It is not irreversible. You can reverse it. It's not permanent. The increase in size of a balloon is not permanent. And then when you talk about dry weights, that is the same thing. Like the weight of a balloon is not with the air in it. We weigh a balloon without the air in it when it is dry. And that is what we call the dry weight of a balloon. But what if we weigh a balloon when it has air in it? So it can give you another different weight, and that is called a gross weight. It is not a dry weight. So that is, you should understand dry weight. So for us to get dry weight of you as a human being, first of all, we need to maybe first make sure that you are not so satisfied. We have removed all everything. Maybe we have even roasted you, not roasted you, but dehydrated you to remove water from your body. Maybe you might have taken uh, 2 or 3 cups of water and they are contributing to your weight. But when we remove all the water from your body, we can get your dry weight. So I hope you understand. But this is something that I want you to understand, that when it comes to organisms, we human beings, I'll be referring more of us human beings because that's when you understand most, or that's when you can relate more to. But understand that growth is in both plants and animals, as we will be looking at it as we continue with this very topic. It is in both plants and animals. But you should understand that plants and animals, they have multi cells. Yes, there are some organisms that have only one cell, but in multicellular organisms, growth is in 3 phases. So in multicellular organisms, growth happens in 3 phases, and these are the 3 phases of growth. The first phase is called cell division. Now, cell division happens in what you call mitosis. Now, this cell division, we have meiosis and mitosis, but cell division just simply means increase in the number of cells, mainly by them dividing themselves. So we will look at it further under the subtopic cell division. But what you should understand for now is that during reproduction, the sperms and the egg, these ones, they are produced in the process called cell division. So your growth begins by cell division. You as a human being, the sperm and the egg began by a simple process called cell division. As you look at it, the more you study biology, and you might also already know it, that it begins with cell division. Now, cell division is simply just a multiplication of this number of cells by just them dividing themselves. Then you come to the second phase of growth. Now, the second growth in multicellular organisms is the permanent increase in the cell size, as a result of uptake of water or synthesis of living materials. Now, synthesis is just manufacturing and metabolisms. Now, remember, cells can increase just by when you take water, when they take in water, then they expand. They just expand. That expansion is not growth. What you're talking about is a permanent increase in the size of the cell. Now, remember, when the activities are taking place in this cell, metabolism is taking place, chemical reactions are taking place in these cells, there is that permanent increase in the size of the cell or the expansion of the cell. Like, for example, also in you as a human being, when an egg meets a sperm and there's expansion, the expansion starts occurring in your body, expansion of these cells, permanent increase in the size of these cells start happening in the what, in the fallopian tube of a female. That expansion is already occurring now. Expansion, even you as a human being, from when you were a baby, expansion has been happening. Your brain cells, all the cells in your body have been permanently expanding, but you should uptake this expansion. Should be, this phase should be very easy for you. First, try to remember the cells, how the cells were. They are like very small, and then compare it with the size of the baby. This is called what? Expansion phase. But the third phase, it is called cell differentiation. Now, what we mean by cell differentiation, this involves specialization of cells. This specialization, I want you to understand this word. Specialization of cells to suit a particular function. Let's say these cells are now specialized in smelling. These cells are specialized, these are brain cells. These cells are specialized in what? In maybe touch, in feeling. These cells are specialized in, there is what we call specialization of cells. And this also happens when now this there is expansion of cells is happening. When expansion of cells is happening, some cells, when they reach this cell differentiation, this we begin specialization of cells. That's when we have different systems of the body. Some cells are going to specialize in the digestive system. Some cells are going to specialize into excretion system. Some cells are going to specialize into the hearing system. That is what we call what? The function specialization. And now, growth is usually accompanied by increase in the complexity of the organism. Now, the more specialized we become, when the more these cells start taking different functions, the more complex this organism begins. Like we as human beings, we can do so many things. You are the one who can smell, you are the one who can run, you are the one who can think, you are the one, all these functions and all these specialized cells that come together to make this complex organism. This is what we also call development. This is what we also call development. So this phase, this last phase of growth that we call cell differentiation, also leads us to what we call development. So what is development? So development is the increase in the complexity of an organism and change in form of an organism. So when you are changing in form, you are developing. So I like talking about development like in real life. For example, when you are changing in form, not every single year you're going to be in the same class. If you are not changing in form, every year you're in senior one, every year you're in senior four, every year you are not developing. So development means it comes with change of form, comes with change of form. Today you are in senior four, tomorrow you are in senior five, or next year you're in senior five. That means that what? You have developed. That is change or form. Then complicity with, when it comes to development, this is the third phase where you find that different cells are going to be doing different functions. That is what we call complicity. I hope you understand when I talk about that. Now, we have factors that affect growth in organisms. There are several factors that affect growth in organisms. And for today, we are going to look at some of these factors that affect growth in these organisms. Now, what are these? There are two parts. When you talk about factors affecting growth, they are divided into two parts. We have external and internal. Now from these words, you know that external factors, these are factors that happen outside of the organism, of this particular organism. Then internal factors, these are factors that are within this organism itself. Yes. So we can be having external, we can all be exposed to the same environment, everything the same external, but when our internal making is different, so it means our growth is also going to be different. So let's look at the external factors first, and then later we'll look at the internal factors that affect growth. So the external factors, the first one, like you all know, when they look at you and you are so thin, people think you don't eat, because the first thing is nutrient. That is the first thing that causes growth, like that affects growth. Now what happens is that growth of an organism increases in the ability of nutrients and decreases when nutrients are in short supply. So when there is availability of nutrients, it increases. Now, as a biology student, there is no shortcut in biology, but if I can give you one of the shortcuts, whenever you read sentences like this, try to summarize in your biology book. I don't want summaries where you have a lot of words like this. Try to summarize them using what? Using graphs. For example, when you read a statement like this, that uh, growth of an organism increases in the availability of nutrients and decreases when nutrients are in short supply. So you draw a graph in your summary group. You draw a graph. You say, okay, the availability of nutrients. This is nutrients, and this is growth. Yes, sir, this is growth. So meaning the increase in nutrients, the availability of nutrients. Let me just remove this line. Okay, increase in the availability of nutrients increases what? Increases growth. You understand? Increases the rate of growth. Rate of growth. So the availability of nutrients increases growth, while decrease in what? It means that if nutrients were also decided, decrease in nutrients also decreases growth. You get me? That's how you should summarize. I'm just giving you an example of how you should summarize this in your books. So you don't write a lot of words, but you know that you are practicing both the graph and what? And content, and the content itself. So you should always do that. So back to the topic, back to our topic. Our topic, as I've been telling you, my dear students, that growth in an organism increases with the availability of nutrients, but also and decreases when nutrients are in short supply. So this is because nutrients are used in the building up of new protoplasm. Now, if you don't know protoplasm, I know you remember this diagram of a cell. Then you have something like a mitochondria here. These are mitochondria. Then maybe you have so many things here, mitochondria. So this is a cell membrane. So this thing here, what you see, this area, this living area where nutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, and what live, this one here is what we are calling a protoplasm. So for a new protoplasm to occur, all these other nutrients and everything to happen here, all these nutrients live in this protoplasm. So availability of nutrients really affects that place so much, and that's why we have mentioned about it. And organic matter, also nutrients can be oxidized to produce energy required for growth. Therefore, lack of nutrients can lead to decrease in growth or even death. Lack of nutrients can lead to decrease in what? Can lead to decrease in growth or even death. Now, when remember, I did say that growth is permanent increase. I want to explain something. Rate of growth, especially, you should be actually mentioning more of rate of growth. I said it is a permanent increase, so we cannot reverse it. You cannot reverse growth. So when you meet in textbooks and everything, you say decrease in growth, they don't mean that this growth is going to like, for example, if you have grown like this, so growth is going to decrease and then you are going to become young. No, that's what don't they mean. They mean the rate of growth. For example, if you have been growing, let's say by meters, if you have been growing by 1 meter, if maybe a tree has been, or any other thing has been growing by 1 meter, let's say 1 meter, for every 1 week, 1 week you grow with 1 meter. Now there can be factors that come, and then in the same 1 week you are growing maybe 0.001 meter. So this rate of growth has decreased. Yes, there is growth. There can be growth to no even growth, to zero growth. But why? Just because of factors that we are seeing. So when you see us talking about decrease in growth, don't mean that the growth is reversed, but we mainly mean the rate of growth that has been the one that has been decreased. I hope you get that point clearly, because you'll meet it so much in the factors that affect growth. You'll meet that so much. So let's continue. Now, we have accumulation in byproducts. Now, when we talk about byproducts of metabolism, what are byproducts of metabolism? First of all, how do they affect growth? The more byproducts accumulate in your body, it reduces the rate of growth. So, what are byproducts? And what are these byproducts of metabolism? Every single time they mention anything about byproduct, talk about water. That's the first. Not only water, talk about carbon dioxide. Why? Because I told you metabolism, these are chemical reactions in the body, and these chemical reactions always have byproducts. And the first byproduct of you breathing in, because when you breathe in oxygen, oxygen is going to go into your body and chemical reactions are going to happen. What is the exchange or the byproduct? Is carbon dioxide. And if carbon dioxide accumulates in your body, it is going to reduce the rate of your growth. And thank God that in most animals and plants, we have mechanisms in our body that help us to eliminate these byproducts. So that's why we breathe oxygen in and we breathe out carbon dioxide. That only process makes us to survive. So if carbon dioxide accumulates in your body, just assume you couldn't exhale out carbon dioxide. What happens? Yet in plants, now, as oxygen is what is the material we are using in plants, the byproduct is again this oxygen. For them, they take in again carbon dioxide and get out oxygen. I hope you understand that biology very well. And then another byproduct that you should always remember when they ask you about byproduct of metabolism, you should talk about ammonia. You should talk about ammonia products. Do you understand? Like urea, urea acids. Those are all byproducts. Ammonic acids. Those are all byproducts of what? Of metabolism. So these byproducts, they have to be expelled away from our body. If they are not expelled, then they can stunt growth. Now, what of temperature? Increase in temperature increases enzyme activity up to optimum. Increase in temperature increases enzyme activity up to optimum. So these enzymes activity here, remember, they are the ones that affect metabolism. So this enzyme activity here, when the enzyme activity is high, then we are going to have a lot of nutrients that are going to be being broken down to give us energy that is going to support our growth. But remember, when temperature reaches an optimum temperature, the rate of enzyme activity retards and it can even go down. So if this is the effect of temperature on enzymes, just know that also when it reaches the optimum temperature, further increase in temperature just denatures the enzymes. So what happens to the growth? The rate of growth reduces. When with further increase beyond the optimum temperature. Optimum But before the optimum temperature for these enzymes, increase in temperature increases enzyme activity. I hope you should understand that very well. That's why I said graphs are very important to you. Now let's talk about light. We have light also. Now light mainly happens in plants. When we talk about light, we look at plants because light is what affects the rate of photosynthesis. And remember, photosynthesis is the process in which these plants use to make their own food. So this light helps the plants to make their own food. That's why they need light for them to grow. You understand? So increase in light, that's why increase in light intensity in green plants increases the rate of growth, and decrease in light intensity decreases the rate of growth. So you should understand how that graph, I want you to draw that in your, when you draw light and then rate of growth, how rate of growth, how does it affect? So increase in light increases the rate of growth. You get me? You should be able to illustrate that in your graph. So all these factors, please understand them well because they can bring them in a lot of scenario questions, in experiments, in graphs. You should understand them. Then I will just talk about pH. So what is pH and how does pH affect growth? So when we talk about pH, we relate them to enzymes. Remember, every enzyme has its own pH. There are some acidic enzymes that work bestly in acidic pH, while there are some enzymes that work mainly in a basic pH. So these ones, it all depends on the enzyme that is in. So the best pH, the best pH always is affected, or always is determined by the type of enzyme that is carrying out that reaction in the body. You should always remember that. Then carbon dioxide, we talked about carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide is a waste product of metabolism, and if it is allowed to accumulate in the body, it can decrease the rate of growth. Carbon dioxide, we already talked about it under byproducts, but it is a very big byproduct that it is given its own. Now, what we have been discussing all along, they have been external factors. And how many have I given you? I've given you 4 external factors. I've given you 6 external factors. Always remember these 6 external factors. Then the internal factors that affect, they are more. If you are to break down the byproducts are more, but I had to summarize them and also put carbon dioxide on its own. So the 5 might be important, but the most important thing is understanding how each factor affects growth into details. Now let's talk about the internal factors. These are factors that happen within your making, within your makeup. You get me? The first one are hormones. For you, you may just have hormones that are what? Hormones that don't we have growth hormones. You guys know we have growth hormones. One of the when I'm teaching this in class or to any of my students, I talk about a very known football player called Messi. So when you remember Messi had a problem that he could not grow. He could not grow. He was too short and he could not grow. So what they had to do, part of the treatment was he was supposed to be injected with growth hormone. You understand? So you may not grow just because your hormones don't support that. So we have growth hormones that when you eat, they are increased in your blood. Those are the growth hormones that are needed for you to be able to grow. Now, one of the growth hormones, I've already mentioned for you here that the presence of growth hormones and thyroxine in blood increases the rate of growth in plants. Now, the presence of auxins also increase the rate of growth. So I've mentioned for you that for the growth in plants. Now, the second thing is heredity factors. Now, inheritance. Have you seen pygmies. For those of you, you know the pygmies from Congo. They are short people from Congo. It is inherited. These are genes of shortness that are inherited within their community from the parents. They pass on these genes of shortness or their type of growth to the siblings, and now that happens to all of us, even as our growth is also hereditary. You find that your growth is like that of your parents because you have inherited these genes from your parents. So these are internal factors. So there are two internal factors that I've talked about, and they are all beginning with H, but the first H is for hormones and the next is for the heredity factor or genetic factor. Those are the two internal, and the other six are external factors. Now, for each factor, you should know how does it affect growth, and you should you should know deeply which other in-depth factor affects growth when it increases or when it decreases. Now, in the next lesson, we are going to go deep because I told you in this growth we have in plants and we have in animals. So, in the next chapter, we are going to learn about growth and development in plants. This is when we are going to do germination. We are going to see how light affects growth. We are going to see all these things we have been just introducing with you. So let me see you in the next class, and I hope you have taken some notes. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification button because we are bringing you a lot just at the comfort of your home or school. Thank you. I have been Alias from GVN Academy. Let me see you in the next class.